Well, we've spoken. Thanks for tuning into this broadcast, of course, viewers. We've spoken to a lot of people about spaces which are looking intriguing right now because the dynamics for business are there, but maybe the lockdown impedes them. And now, remember when Vibha Patilkar of HDFC Life had spoken to us about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the results, she had mentioned that new business, had come to a grinding halt. Maybe some of those things have changed. The results of some of these insurance companies have also been better. But the question is, one thing is to hear from insurance companies themselves. Two is to hear from somebody who facilitates this, and it's arguably amongst the largest players within that ecosystem. And I'm talking about Policybazaar. And Yashish Dahiya, the founder and CEO of Policybazaar, joins us right now. I would love to get some consumer insights from him as well later on. But Yashish, thanks for taking the time out and speaking to us at BloombergQuint. This is Neeraj here. Good afternoon.
Good
Any
afternoon, Neeraj.
any insights or anything stuff that you've spotted which is a departure from what we normally see aside of course the fact that people are not able to meet agents, and therefore on the physical side from the company's side those number of policies might be going down.
So, if I was to say for HDFC Life, our sales have definitely increased. Now, what's happening is health insurance and life insurance sales for the digital channel have increased. There's no doubt about it. Roughly about 40% ahead of plan. And at the same time, motor insurance, which was a compulsory product and is a compulsory product, the sales are down by about 15%. And if I break that down further, what I see is in motor insurance, there are two kinds of sales. One was people purchasing a policy before their past policy has expired. And the second was, of course, I'm talking at a very high level, was people whose policy has lapsed and they have to renew their policy, but their policy has lapsed. So the second kind of sales have come down to about 1/3. So what that tells you is people who were delaying their policies a little bit are now delaying them much more. But the people who used to renew are pretty much renewing on time. And for health insurance and life insurance, clearly both the number of inquiries as well as the amount of sales have gone up. If anything, I would say on our part, there may be a little bit of lack of discipline. It's a hard word to use in these times because we have a lot of employees all working from home, so it's very difficult to expect all of them to work exactly as they would in office. So while work from home productivity is higher, and that's on a blended basis, there are some people who are doing an amazing job, and there are some people who are also avoiding. Sometimes it's very easy to avoid the customer, etc., in a work from home environment. So it's a tough time that way to manage organization wide discipline and monitor things, etc. But as I said, health and life 40% up, motor about 15% down, travel insurance totally wiped out. There's very little travel insurance. Those are basically people who are stuck abroad who are just renewing their policies. Otherwise, there is not much travel happening. Two-wheeler, maybe about 20% down. That's because the number of lapsed policies as a percentage of total policies is slightly higher there. So once again, to recap, in compulsory products, motor and two-wheeler, the lapsed policies are no longer being renewed. The rest are getting renewed. And in health and life, there's a take-up. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, just before I proceed on each of those points, this is an experience that you're telling from Policybazaar's perspective, or have you been able to check with some of your peers and they are also experiencing something similar? Any thoughts?
So when I speak with insurance companies, everybody is saying the online channel is up. Banks are starting to get their act right. In the sense, I don't mean that in a negative way. What I mean is, see, banks typically sold on two bases, right? A customer walking into them, or they were giving a loan, and so they alongside sold an insurance policy also. I think the loans are not happening. So clearly the insurance policies from that perspective have declined. People are not walking into banks, so that part has declined. But what the banks are doing beautifully, some of the banks are doing very well, is through their websites, they are continuing to sell. And insurance being a high margin product for them, they are quite focused on that. So that part is happening. And I hear some of the well-run banks in the country are doing a phenomenal job at that. I think agency at this stage would suffer, whatever you say, right? Because eventually it's very difficult to get into somebody's house and sort of try and sell insurance at this stage. And I think any product that had a physical leg, so for example, if you had a physical medical or if you had a physical inspection, that's almost impossible. But I see that as a short-term phenomena. I don't see that as a long-term phenomena because that should be back very soon.
Okay. Now, two interesting pivots that you've given me in your opening answer, and I want to tackle each of them individually. Firstly, the lapse policies and for motors and vehicles, two-wheelers. I think I heard you say 20%. Cars, I think I heard you say 15% drop. Now, what is this? Is this? I mean, you kind of understand the consumer behavior as well. Is this the consumer saying that I don't want to do it right now because why should I do it when I'm not going to take my vehicle out? Once I decide to take my vehicle out, that's when I'll renew it, or is this a sign of something else?
See, as I said, there were two kinds of consumers. One who will every time renew their policy on that particular date. It's not even a question in their mind, right? It just has to happen because it's due on 1st of May. I'll have a new policy on 1st of May. The second set of consumers who either forgot or were not as organized or are like, if the police guy catches me, I'll buy a policy. If I have to, I will do it, right? That guy is saying, look, I don't have to. Why should I pay for this 2-3 months when I'm not even driving my car? I look at my own car, right? I haven't filled up the fuel tank in the last 1.5 months. So why bother, right? So that consumer set is clearly responding in that manner. And those sales are down to about one third. So about 40% of sales used to be such. So it's down to a third. That's why the 15% drop. And in two-wheeler, that was more like 50-60%. So that's again become a third. That's why you see a much larger drop. So you get the math, right? So basically, there's a drop to one third in that area. The other consumers are saying, okay, I have to renew. Where do I renew? And Policybazaar is a great place to renew. So I'll go to Policybazaar and just renew. It's easy, it's simple. I get all my prices and all that stuff. So you're seeing the two behaviors, and they are both quite different. People who have to buy are finding some place like Policybazaar quite easy to buy. Sure. And people who don't want to buy are finding it very easy to defer right now.
Got it. Okay. The other question is with regards to life insurance. And did I hear you say that there has been a 40% pickup? And my part two of my question is this higher than what Policybazaar would do normally?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we are ahead of our plans. So we obviously make a plan on a monthly basis, and we track that quite diligently. We have been way ahead of our plans since pretty much the day the lockdown started.
Wow. Okay. And I'm just wondering. I mean, so I'm presuming that it's difficult to give bifurcations about life and term, but overall, the life.
No, we primarily do the term business.
Okay, great. What about health insurance? Can you give us some insight there? Do you guys do that, and what's the trend like
we
there?
do health insurance. We do health insurance. We are a significant part of fresh health insurance business in the country. We are about 12% of all fresh health insurance business in the country. And we were about 7% before lockdown started. So our share has grown quite fast, and we want to grow that more. We want to get to about 25% market share, both on our growth as well as some of the struggles that the industry is facing. I think, it's people are more concerned about health insurance, and they are certainly buying a lot more health insurance on the platform because it's easy. We've also invested a lot in telemedicals, video medicals, and those kind of things. So, most of the companies on our platform use those facilities. So there's almost no physical medical in health insurance anymore.
Yeah, sure. So I'm guessing, if I'm not wrong, from what I'm understanding, general insurance notwithstanding, for life and health, there's actually been a pickup. And once the agency sales start, once the lockdown ends, you reckon that the overall pie of number of people insured would have seen a shift up as a result of the COVID-19.
There are three trends that I see as long-term trends which have been speeded up by COVID.
Uh-huh.
One is the trend to buy online. The second is the trend to buy more health insurance and life insurance compared to other insurance things like, investment and motor and all that.
Sure.
And the third is the trend to complete your entire transaction online. So there's a difference between buying online and concluding the entire transaction online, right? So all three of these trends are picking up pace. And there's no doubt about it. Whatever would have been achieved in 2 years is getting achieved within 2 months in terms of industry transformation.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. If I can request you, before we end this conversation, to give us some insights on any other consumer trends that you see.
No, so basically what I'm seeing is usually when you are under stress, you don't have time. You are constrained for time. This is the one, period when people are under stress, they're thinking about basics, food, work, money. Will I have a job? Will my company support me in this situation, etc., etc. Those who don't have a job, they're wondering, when will my shop open? So they have serious financial concerns, so they are under stress. But on the other hand, they actually have a lot of time because you can't really do much, right? So they're starting to think about the important things. And quite honestly, health insurance and life insurance are one of those very, very important things which people think very little about otherwise. So it's giving people a time to think and kind of act on those pieces. And it takes about 1.5 hours to buy a health insurance or a life insurance policy. It's not just about making the payment, right? It's about deciding what's right for you, what are the features, which company, all those things. It takes a bit of time. So people are finding that free 90 minutes to invest in their health insurance and life insurance and conclude that transaction, which wasn't happening as easily earlier because people were getting pulled into 20 different directions. Today they are under stress, but they're not getting pulled in 20 directions. I think that's really the thing we are seeing. And the second thing, of course, is nobody wants to meet anyone. This is something that I expect to continue way beyond lockdown. I'm just seeing the level of physical social distancing across society increasing. So when I talk to my parents, when they get the vegetables, they're now putting it in lime water and keeping it there for 3 days, and God knows what all they are doing. So I think these habits don't die very quickly. These become habits, and as they say, 21 days is enough to form a habit.
Yeah, you're right. Well, maybe post-COVID would be a completely different world compared to pre-COVID, and maybe for good. But this was.
Yeah, but on the other hand, our Policybazaar business has totally got wiped out here. So Policybazaar, there is, there's no lending, there's no, all that stuff is gone.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think a lot of your other peers in different ways and shape and form are also echoing the same thing. But you reckon it'll take some time for it to get back? Any thoughts there before we wind this up?
See, I think lending will take a very long time to get back because, who's going to lend in this period, right? Because who are you going to lend to? I think the prime market is going to shrink. The subprime market is going to disappear. But I think in the long term, when I mean long term, I mean 3 years. In a 2 to 3 year time frame, there'll be a massive comeback in lending. But I think the next 1 year is looking very bleak for lending. Very, very bleak.
Well, thanks for being so candid about it as well, and for some wonderful insights. We would love to talk to you once again in a couple of months, once maybe this lockdown is over and some more updates come up. But thanks for taking the time out today and speaking to us.
Look forward. Thank you.
And viewers, thanks for tuning into this broadcast.
Beep.